Evening all. I've got to stop saying that. I sound like a 1970s Bobby. That's a copper for those that policeman. Got to be politically correct and everything these days. So welcome to episode 8 of Dirty Talk Live. As you can see going across the bottom, we've got Shaun Simpson and Justin Barclay in what I call a green room. A good thing I like about this is we're live. I can see their facial expressions. You can't yet. Justin, just make sure you got your hair all fixed. And by the way, put the Christmas tree lights. They're quite distracting. Right. Okay. So let's get them on. Basically, first up, let's bring in track builder extraordinaire Justin Barclay. There's Justin with a rather funky Tintin type haircut. And oh no, let's bring Shaun in. There he is, Shaun Simpson. We're all rocking the beards. Evening, gents. How are you?
All good, very good.
Not bad. The short nights or the long nights, dark nights, taking their toll. But we're just trying to get some work done and get ready for 2021. Hopefully, it's a bit better than this year.
It's bloody cold. You're quite seasonably hard up there in Scotland, though, Shaun. But the beard is that fashion conscious, or is that because it's getting a bit nippy round the chops up there?
Bit of both, just couldn't be bothered shaving, and then we're doing a bit of house renovations, and just it gets past the point that my Mach 3 turbo just can't cut it, and then I'm just like, yeah, we'll probably just grow out for a bit, and then ask the barber to just take it off when he's doing the sides.
Well, I tell you what, Shaun, ever professional there. Just nice pitch for a Mach 3 sponsorship. I think you might just get some free in the post. Not that we get that many viewers, but if anybody's watching from Mach 3, give that man a razor.
Could do with a few because they cost a few.
So, listen, guys. So, what actually have you been doing this year? I know, obviously, Shaun. I know you've been racing. What have you been doing since the season's ended? Have you just sort of looked at 2020 and gone, "Oh, this is a crocker. Let's just park it there."
Well, it's been even worse for me with the injury just before the Faenza round, breaking my back in 3 places. Ended up in hospital for a week. I was back home in Scotland after my week in hospital, and I've just been here since, really. So only done 4 races in the whole of 2020. It's probably the least I've done since I started racing, and yeah, it was a bummer because a lot of guys didn't really probably enjoy the triple headers, but it would have been nice to have been a part of more of those, just because something that might never happen again. You never know, we might have to run into that scenario next year, but I think I would have liked it. But the ironic thing about it all was, me and my dad were driving to Latvia, and we said, you know what, this new schedule, with these triple headers, we need to make sure that we're at every single one. You don't do anything stupid, and you don't get injured, and it'll all be okay. And then I was on my ear in the first bloody race in Latvia, and then it didn't get any better from there. And then 2 weeks later, we're driving home to Scotland, and I've got a broken back, and you just think, oh, how did that go so wrong?
Well, you know why? Because you went and bloody said it. That's the first thing, isn't it? Don't say anything. Just talk about good old motocross tracks with your old dad, which we've just been talking about before we've come on. So look, I've said tonight that obviously that's why I got Justin on and you. So let's get straight into it. We've got a few people already commenting. So remember, if you want to ask us a question, just punch it in on Facebook. It appears up on the screen here, and then I can pull it up. We've got Serge Daniels. Let's just give him a mention. There you go. Greetings from Belgium. Got a Belgian viewer, and Dick Law. He's on time. Which you should be, Dick, being what was he, a lorry driver? Weren't you? Are you, Dick? I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, let's talk about tracks. Right, Justin, let's bring you in on this one. When did you so you started building tracks when? When did you get behind your Tonka toy and start giving it some?
I've literally just passed my driving test, and that's when we built our track at Cussers Gorse. Dad gave me and Tim, Tim, everyone that comes to the track knows Tim. He thinks he's my brother, but he's not. He's actually my best mate since we were about 5 years old. So he gave us that, and then he just went, well, go on then. I ain't got time to do it. You get on and do it. So that's how we built our track, really. so it's been there. Yeah, it'll be 20 years next year. So that's how I started, really. And then I went off and did my other careers that I did, and then come back. And I was like, I had a 5-year plan, like what I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind, my goal would be in 5 years to build a Grand Prix track. And then 2 years later, I was at the Motocross of Nations in Thunder Valley thinking, this happened a bit quick. Like, how did that happen? But yeah, it happened. So,
But you must have, you haven't just jumped it. Your dad just didn't go, look, you haven't got a clue. Is the bulldozer, get with it. You've ridden a bit. So
yeah.
So what did you, so how did it, when you were building cusses, did you straight away visualize it? Can you visualize a track, or do you have to literally spend hours and sort of trial and error?
It's something I've learned over, like, chatters always ask me, goes, how do you look at a field and do that? And you sort of have to, like, how I broke it down, best way to explain to everyone, when we drive down the road and we look at a golf course, every motocrosser, I don't care who you are, goes,
they do.
Oh, I'd love to have a rip round that, right? But you think about what that golf course was to start with. It was just a stubble field. Then they added the trees. Then they added the bunkers. Then they added, it's all man-made. Wasn't just like that. It's all been made. But we all look at it like that. So that's the best way to sort of envisage. If you can build a motocross track in the stubble field, but then add all those other little bits in it that make it such a nice feature, then that's where you start. So I always looked on whether there was a bit of a hill. If you got, and Shaun knows some of the places we used to go, because I started when Shaun he was only a factory ride, I think, in 2009, wasn't it? That year, I think.
Yeah, 2009, yeah.
Breeze. And I was going to places, and they're like, wait, build a track in. I'm like, with what? It's flat.
There's nothing there.
And you're like, what do you do here? So you literally just had to build what you had in front of you some places. And then you got to go to Majora when the boys brought Majora like a few years later, and they were like we want it, all the memories, but imagine if Justin Barclay came and how sideways he would be. And that's like, because they were from that's how we sort of saw it, like it was amazing that Alex Pouzar jump on the side of the hill. They just wanted that, but like for a modern bike, which and I tried to keep Majora with, there was no rollers in it. I don't know what it was like afterwards, but we kept all those, like the big horseshoe, the big hills, and tried to keep it as original as we could, but just make everything for a modern bike. I don't know if Shaun sort of agrees with that. It was as old school as we could possibly make it with
I loved it. I really loved Majora. I think it's one of the more natural tracks that we've got to ride more recently, and there's nothing like jumping off, like a Fox Hill style downhill. And Majora probably wasn't just as big the downhills as Fox Hill has, but something when you were coming out of a tight turn up into second gear, third gear, and you're sort of sending it right down to the bottom of a hill. It's just a phenomenal feeling that you don't often get now on a motocross track, because there's big doubles and there's nice, really flowing tabletops and all these kind of things that 99% of the guys can do. And, some of those other bits, it takes you probably till the end of the weekend, unless you've been practicing it somewhere in France prior to going to one of these events, to sort you start jumping, halfway down, and you start jumping 2/3 of the way down. Before you know it, you're jumping 3/4 of the way down by the end of the weekend. And that's where the just like little bits of time can be made up around the track. And I just like difficult sections in a track. And when there's downhills, normally there's big braking bumps because, people are on the brakes really hard. And, I never forget my dad, when I was learning to ride a bike, he was like, you've got to use your brakes properly. And it's 60 to 70% on the front brake and 30% on the rear brake. And 9 times out of 10 for me, it's the other way around, and I like frying your brake discs. But it reminds you to use your brakes properly in scenarios like that. But a lot of these deep, loamy tracks with loads of sort of mellow rollers and things like that, the bikes slow themselves up. It's more like kind of just, and it kind of makes it a bit more tricky to kind of get some difference between each guy out there and difference in the lap times.
So okay, right. So answer this. Well, Justin, you can go first on this. When you build a track, or bearing in mind this question for both of you, so we'll get to your reply, Shaun, in a minute. Do you build a track subjective to, what's the first thing you look at? Is it the lie of the land, or do you build a track subjective to soil? Is it soil or lie of the land? Because here's my example with this then. Hawkstone is, as we know, one of the most demanding motocross tracks you're going to ride. I think Shaun would back me up here, and he's way fitter than me. It was probably demanding for me because I was so ridiculously unfit. I was tired by the time I got to the first corner, for Christ's sake. But, does Hawkstone then warrant and need like modern features? Would that make it better or worse? Because that's got to be everything: elevation, sand. So when you go to a new venue, Justin, what's the first thing you try to pick out to your thought process with it?
So, we go back to the whole golf course thing. Is like first off, a rider's come in. I know Shaun's like that. Is the dirt? If you've got amazing dirt already to start with, you're sort of like a third of the way there. Then you've got to have landscape, which is a big thing, which is hard to get these days. All these, especially in England, how many times do you drive around and just go, oh, imagine, no, it's all protected by the lesser spotted tsetse fly, or, you can't.
That's a real thing.
Walk there now, it's like, but back in the day, you would have been able to ride there or practice there, and no one would have batted an eyelid. But so you get some places like that. For me, one of the best places to work in the world was Brazil. The dirt was like a sandy clay, very much to like
race gear.
Yeah, horrible for your white race gear. Yeah, but again, it's like
sorry, I've got to cut in there because people genuinely moan about that. That's like, oh yeah, it's bloody crap. Staying on my kit.
I spent 2 days power wash my gear, and I ended up binning it.
No, you didn't. I saw Willie selling it in the pits.
all his kit is available on eBay. But no, anyway, so soil really then, so soil, what we're saying effectively makes, or the dirt will technically make a better motocross circuit because the way that it forms, the ruts form, the bumps form, etc.
But then it only forms through the prep. And like Shaun knows, like there's like a handful of guys, we said earlier tonight, there's a handful of guys I used to speak to at the Grand Prix when I was there. I was really young. I was like 19 or 20 when I started doing that. I was still relatively young, so you took a lot of feedback, and some of it you took on the chin, some of it you just like you took it personally, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, like they're 15th today, where normally they're like 5th, so maybe that's just their attitude. That, do you know what I mean? So, but the soil's good. But yeah, again, it's the prep of it. If you're you could be at Lommel and they don't have any water and it just goes to flour. It's horrible to ride. But if it's like a bit damper and a bit wetter, Shaun knows that helps it get bumpier and ruttier and more technical. Max loved it, like Shaun does. He loves it when it gets gnarly and horrible. And Max Hansen used to say to me, just like, why are you doing it? Like, just it's fine, leave it. Just do the nasty bits where it's dangerous, but the rest of it leave, which is what we try to do. Or we try and make racing lines. If it wasn't working somewhere, you try and work on the track. But ideally, go back to your question. Yeah, it's soil, landscape, and then what facilities you have to prep it.
Would you agree with that, Shaun? Is that like a modern track? Is that what you look for as a rider? Because you've seen the transition, or maybe you haven't. We were joking before we came on how stupidly young you are compared with. That's most of the guests I bring on here actually compared with me. So maybe you've ridden in an era where you've been used to more landscape tracks, but then you've also ridden enough old school ones. So do you what's your preference? I mean, obviously I'm guessing by your results and the way you ride, you prefer to see something that is really technical. You shine.
I genuinely think that what differs between World Superbikes or MotoGP to motocross is actual. Now, I'm not saying there's not lines on those tracks, but there's a line that, a meter around the track that everyone hits. It's the fastest way around a MotoGP track, for example. A motocross track, in my opinion, requires much more sort of interpretation of the way the soil is. Now, a good example of that might be one of the first ever races I done in a GP was down at a place called Castellonio del Lago in Italy. Horrible soil. absolutely blue groove, watered. It was like ice. I came from Scotland, few British Championship, turned up there in 2006, and I was like, how can you even read on this stuff? This is horrible. And Caroli and Manuel Moni and all those guys were just like, absolutely loving it, finding all this grip that I just didn't even know existed. And they were literally moving every 15 minutes. They were moving over 6 inches on the track, and they were catching the bit that was not too dry and not too wet. They kept just moving over a tiny little bit, and it was about reading the track. And I was like 10 or 12 seconds off that day, missed the qualifying and everything. And I watched on Sunday, and I genuinely learned something there. But to go back to your point about the perfect track for me, it really just has to have a bit of everything, in my opinion. The soil has to be good. The layout has to be good. There has to be a bit of undulation. I love a track that's got a hill in it, or a hillside, something that creates braking bumps, uphills, downhills, acceleration bumps, things that can open the track up and really start making for good racing. And then if you combine this new style of motocross where you've got these big jumps and technical sections, then you've just got the ultimate dream for a rider. But if you've got, let's say, a hillside in France where they're just like, oh, we make a track here, and it's just sounded like Polish or something.
Well, it was a Polish guy. It was a Polish guy in France. It's perfectly. Yeah, I know what you. I know. Yeah.
But they're just like, oh, look at this hillside. Wouldn't that make a great track? And you start cutting into it with a bulldozer, and it's just like anyone in England would just go, what a waste of time. What terrible dirt. That's never going to work. There's rocks there and everything. And they cultivate it, and they bring in soil and they mix it. And before you know it, you've got places like Ernée and Saint-Jean-d'Angely, which probably should never have had a motocross track on there, apart from these 90-year-old guys that are just getting in their tractor and grubbing it up every Sunday. And, over time, they made this track that worked. And so probably an extra part on all of that is if you don't have the right soil and the right machinery, you can make something of a track that isn't great, if you know what I mean. So
you race a world championship, so obviously it's high level. That's the objective, to lay on a brilliant venue and circuit to make good racing. Obviously, when your dad used to race, they used to ride varying conditions. Now, not so much. The soils work more and whatever. Do you think it should maybe go back a little bit, where, like you just said, when you started, you went to this Italian race, and you have a little bit of everything, and that's what motocross should be. So you have to learn to ride a bit of hardpack as much as you do sand, and there's these varying conditions, rather than trying to get it perfect for every round.
I just think these days it's just, everyone looks to the States and how ripped and nice their tracks are and the variation of lines, and that's just the way everyone goes these days. Everyone's like, oh, we've got to rip it and got to water it and all the rest of it. And, I like it when it's like that, and I like it when it gets technical. But I also don't mind going to a track where it's rock hard, a bit slick, and you've got to sort of use the torque of the bike, and you may be changing a sprocket so it's not too lively, and all these kind of things that you start trying to just gain an advantage where there's not one. But if I go to a track, and after qualifying, I'll give you a good idea of how the track is going to play out for the day. So if you go to somewhere like Lommel, for example, there's maybe 3 seconds between the top 12 guys. Straight away, there's time to be made up somewhere on this track, with fitness, line choice, taking smoother lines, or that kind of stuff. Or you could go to somewhere like Fox Hills on quite a summer's day, where there's maybe 1.5 seconds between the top 8 in a British Championship. And then you go, we're going to have a good start here today, because if I start 8th, it's going to take me half the moto to get into 3rd, and by then the first 2 guys are gone. So I'm going to say for me, it's not as fun to ride a track where you're like, oh, there's not enough in it. I like riding tracks where you're like, do you know what? I could get a mediocre start here, and I could be in the lead on lap 3, and I could probably have a 20-second gap to second place by the end of the moto. But that doesn't necessarily make for great racing to watch. So what I think is great, and what other riders think, oh, that track was mega today, because you know what? I started 5th. I come through into the lead and I checked out. The crowd's going, oh, that was pretty boring. And then the track where I think, oh, there's just no room for error today, or you got a bit of wheel spin on the start and you mucked it all up, and then you complain because you're like, oh, well, there was nothing in the track today and I hated it and it wasn't prepped properly. But the crowd loved it because there was such a close race between the top 5 guys, for example. So I think the bottom line here is what I'm trying to say is you'll never get a track that the spectators or the riders or the organising or everyone loves, and that's just the bottom line.
So you, as a rider then, you've kind of accepted that GP motocross, because of the size of the venues, the professionalism, this is the big argument, this is why we go into more venues where tracks have to be made for the infrastructure. You totally get that, and you're comfortable with that.
I do, just purely because you have to move with the times. And if you're just sort of sitting there going, no, well, I don't agree with this, and I think we should go into more natural tracks and all the rest of it, you put yourself at a disadvantage straight away, because mentally you're putting a downer on this this platform that you're willing to go and showcase your skills. So I've always been of the opinion that, you know, I wasn't a massive fan of going to Imola, you know, for the GP there, because it was on a road race circuit and it was kind of really stony ground. And to be honest, it looked horrible. I absolutely loved the first year that we went there. The track was deep and technical and I had some good results there. The next year we went back, I thought, oh, yes, Imola, it's a great track. It's going to be, and I hated it. You know, it all depends. It all depends on your kind of your mindset, your bike setup, and all the rest of it. And that's why, for me, motocross is so interesting, because you're better off just going to a track thinking, this is a track on a different day. And everyone says, oh, you love Lommel. Yeah, I do. On any given day. I don't love it every single time I go there. In fact, I normally hate it if I go practicing there and think, oh, scrap that, let's go somewhere else next time.
Shaun will remember Tushental, and Tushental changed. There was one of the tracks that they, you know, it was an old school track. When you used to watch it on TV when you were a kid, you're like, oh, I'd love to go there. Look at that, you know, the mountains in the background, which is salt, as I found out. And then you're like, wow, the big valley and everything. You get there and you're like, this is tiny. This place is tiny. It looks so big on TV. And you get there and it's quite small. And I was like, when they said they were going to have the Motocross of Nations there, I was like, where are you going to put everyone? Like, there isn't the room. So we managed to sort of like, they were the old school club, you know, like you're dealing basically the Grand Prix. Sort of like half of them go to the new tracks with new people that are building an event. They're not building how can you say, they're not a motocross club. They're not, so that they do that all year round, and their big finale is the GP each year. 50% of them was like a business, and Shaun would know, because some weeks you'd have all the machinery you wanted to do the track and it would be great and loads of people and everything. And then the next week, Shaun would see me driving some tractor with like
no cab on it or something.
Yeah, no cab. Willie would be lending me spanners to fix it, to try and get like at least try and do the start line even, you know. But Tushental was one of those ones for the Motocross of Nations. We were like, right, we've got an old school track, which is super cool. We've got all these great features, but we're going to have to sort of like modernize it a little bit to hold the nations, to, you know. And we did a lot of work there. But you know, one year you go there and it's rich, it's deep, it's nice, it's what have you. But if they haven't used it or they've beaten the track to death all year, for us to come in and prep it in a week or 2 weeks to get it to like a nice condition, it sometimes was really hard. And one year you go there and it's lovely, and the next year you go there and it's like a road race track. And you're like, well, how did that happen? Like, and it's
such a fine line with weather, wind. You know, you can water it what you think's the same, and it's just like 5 mile an hour more wind, and it just dries it out more, or there's more classes on it and bakes it more. Tushental is one of those tracks that's very natural, but you know, one of the good things I liked about Tushental is pretty much every single year you go, there's something a little bit different. There's a corner or a jump or even just something that's just a little bit different. I just really hate it when we go to a track and you have a look, you do half a track walk and you go, that was a waste of time. You know, there's not
right. That's a good, because I was going to bring that up. Okay, I'm going to get on to something else in a minute, but as you've touched on that, you've already answered the question to a degree, particularly UK. Do you think that, you know, we're at a level now with British Championships or whatever where we should just add that something a little bit different each year to keep it fresh. The AMA Nationals tend to change things every year. They might run it around the other way. They might same venue, but they just add something to make it different every year. I mean, you've already answered the question, but you basically.
I absolutely agree, and that's why I sing the praises of like a Canada Heights, for example. Just I like the soil there because it's different on the top and it is the bottom. It rots up.
Well, there you go. Liam's asking your opinion, and you're just about to tell us.
Yeah, absolutely love it. But what I also love is I've been there probably 15 times, and 10 of those times it's been completely different. They go a different way, and you get out your van and you walk up the start straight, and you go, "What way are we going today? Oh, it's left today," and then it's like, "Oh, down here. Shit, normally going up there, but now we're going through the trees that way," and it's just different. Maybe to an extreme where it's like sometimes it doesn't work out for them, but at least it's different. And then another great track in the UK is Ling, and I don't dislike going to Ling, but it's just exactly the same every year. And maybe in 15 years of going there, I've seen like 2 small changes, and I'm talking about, they just prepped takeoff a bit differently.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I just think it would be nice to see some changes. And as a rider, that motivates you to see how it works. But also, as an organizer or as even a track builder, there's probably areas of a track that you were like, "Oh, that really worked," and that part of the track isn't working. So next time round, let's adjust that a little bit and see if we can improve. And I think, like bike setup, tire choice, all of that stuff, you're just looking to improve all the time, and I think it should be like the same with tracks.
I'm totally with Shaun on that. As Jeff knows, this year we changed our track quite a bit. I've always been a bad one for going to other places and changing people's tracks. Come on, change track, and I've never changed my own. So like this year, the last couple of years, I've sort of been working, and this year we changed quite a bit.
Okay.
And it made some bits a lot better. And I looked at it and thought, that ain't going to be any good for racing. I just thought that ain't going to be. But it some of it worked a lot better than
Hold on. You even thought that, but you didn't. Was it a time issue that you didn't change that? So you still put it out there thinking that's not going to work for racing.
No, I thought, well, let's try it because some of it, like Shaun says,
exactly.
You've got to try a little bit in process of elimination. The problem is we see our track used probably 20 times in a year for a practice day. A practice day to a race day is completely different. Shaun will tell you, you go to Lommel on a practice day and there's 3 good guys there. There's not many lines.
No.
There and there's 20 good guys there. The track's beat to death. It's got loads of lines. It's a lot better. It's for the
they're bigger, they're longer because the speed's higher, all that kind of stuff.
All that kind of stuff. So until we have like 2 or 3 top flight races at our track during the year, and then that's the only time you get to see those fast boys how they differ. And yeah, that 90-degree corners are not the best, and sweepers and tighten up is a little bit better because you can go outside, inside, all that kind of stuff. But there was bits that I put in, I was like, that ain't going to work. But for the MX Nationals that we had when we changed it, oh my God, I was like, it doesn't even add up that it should work. But there's passing going on there where there's never been. And it's cool to see that because you're like, it's something different every time. But yeah, again, it's how the rider interprets that as well. So, there's...
That's also something that annoys me with sometimes if you see like a GP, for instance, these days, or even down to the British Championships where they put the, I'm going to say the schoolboys or the MXY2 type guys out first. And, no disrespect to them. Some of them are quite good level, but some of them are also quite inexperienced. So the easy thing for someone to do when they see a nice deep ripped track is just go, oh, that's where the guy in front of me went, so I'll just follow him. And then the guy behind him was the same. Yeah. Before you know it, you've got one deep line into one corner, and by the time it's going to qualifying, no one wants to go left or right of that line because it's a bit too deep. What I seem to see in America is when everyone goes out and practice, everyone's just going all over the place. And by the time the race comes or qualifying comes, there is these lines that are really wide outside and just catching a little bit of drier dirt. And by the time the racing comes, that's a bit sort of knackered, so they're back on the inside.
I tried to work that theory out because if you noticed in the Grand Prix, when I'm going back, why they asked me why I wanted to do Grand Prix was simply because we always used to get beaten by the Americans. Yeah. And the reason we always used to get beaten by the Americans is as Ben Tanley put it, the A to B speed is a lot quicker because of their supercross skills. Yeah. So when I come into Grand Prix, we started building just a set of rollers at like 8 meter tops. The next year was 10 or 12. then was like 15, and then towards the end was like 16-meter top rollers. But when we went to America and built something like that, Glen Helen, they were like, man, these are like, how do you do that? Like, that's, you get someone like Paolin's just like BMX wheeling across them.
Yeah,
he's so used to them, you know. And we that was my like aim, was to always make our European riders as good as, if not better than, the Americans at motocross, because, you know, we didn't have the stuff that they were riding every week, you know. And so, yeah, put something that is a bit hard out the corner, you know, but the Europeans soon caught on, and I'd like to think, you know, like, we have been better than the last at least 4 or 5 years.
yeah.
You know, I talked to even working in America, they come to us and they said, look, your guys are riding like gnarly tracks now. They're proper bumpy, they're gnarly.
I think there's a bit more respect there, isn't there?
Yeah, and Tim Ferry was one of them. He's like, we almost become a little bit lipstick because we like it a bit more groomed and a little bit groomed up now, where if we went to you guys, we're just like, well, what the heck's this? You know, like, you just water it and leave it. And
so
I would argue, just going back to that really quickly about the inside outside and the younger guys following each other. Like, back in 2004, I'm pretty sure it was Johnny Douglas Hamilton that prepped I Love White, and I seen one of these questions pop up.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I know. I was there.
Yeah. And, you know, the track was super wide and it was super ripped and all the rest of it. And that could have been a track on that day that I remember that could have just sort of grooved out with one nice fast line all the way around the insides, the apex, the shortest route of the track. But I'm sure Johnny or the organisers at the time...
I can put my hand up with that, because obviously, unaware, you probably can't remember that I was an integral part of the whole organising team, and with Johnny and everything like that. Yeah. So that was what, because me and Johnny stayed there for 3 months, built the track. I nearly rolled one of those big dump trucks because I was inexperienced. That was a pamphlet moment. But I basically helped Johnny build and design the track. He did the majority of it. But anyway, and one thing that drove us to doing that was we used to watch the AMA Nationals and see how, and we'd been to a couple by that point ourselves, and seen how they put hay bales out in practice. And they do. I mean, the marshals are trained, or they have track crew that get out there, just, you know, not branded hay bale, just a few hay bales, and just block the track on the first few laps of open practice. Yeah. So they have to go round it, and then they're already making that line. Then about 5-10 minutes in, they move it. So straight away, like, you're 10-15 minutes into practice, and you already got a load of lines. Now, I was going to ask you that, Shaun. Do you think, you know, like, we got to get a bit more with it? I'm not saying GPs, but particularly in the UK, it's not a difficult thing to do. Do you think, hopefully Gareth's watching this, and whatever he's doing with the British Championship next year, he should genuinely think of doing it. And everybody, all of the series, actually, not just Gareth.
If you just choose half the corners on your track, or half the corners on your track that you know are going to provide a one-line situation that should really easily have 2 lines in it, if you throw a couple of hay bales out, like you say, for the first 15 minutes of practice, and it's quite deep and loamy, I'm just going to take, you know, like Justin's track for an example, or, you know, somewhere where, you know, like, guys will follow each other in, and then it's a wee bit sloppy, so they won't, you know, go to the sides of it. I genuinely think that's a good idea, because when the board goes out for time qualifying, your brain's going to tell you, well, get the shortest distance on the track. But then you're in somewhere that's a bit sloppy and there's no line. And there's a guy going, you know, 16 feet to the right of you in a nice deep rut that, you know, you've been carving since lap 1 of practice. And that's where you've got to then go round 8 or 10 corners on the track that have been selected and actually make a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did actually, I'll tell you, we did actually start doing that, Jeff, at Grand Prix when I started working there.
I think, you did. I wasn't too sure. I didn't want to dive in there because my memory's shot.
We did, and it was all fine until someone, I won't name what class it was, someone clipped one, had a bit of an accident, and then we were told no longer to do that. Right. I totally agree with you. I think for the first 5 minutes, we used to do it. We used to make it so that outside was only available to start with. After 5 minutes, we brought the middle one in, so then the middle and the outside was available, and then the last one was the inside one. And we did that religiously for about the first 3 or 4 Grand Prix I was at, because we always had quite a good team with us. And then, someone hit one quite hard.
It can be as simple as one of those little plastic stakes with a bit of tape on it. You know, it doesn't have to be a hay bale that someone clips a foot peg on, But if someone comes round and starts blasting through the tapes, then your number.
Yeah. You know that will happen in the UK for sure. I didn't see it. My brakes failed.
I remember putting doorbells on the inside of corners in Brazil because of Mr. Simpson cutting corners. I know.
So listen, ask me this, Justin. When you build a track and it starts, like Shaun said, through practice, throughout qualifying, who makes the decision? Okay, let's talk about you at GPs first and foremost. How does the decision made when you go, okay, that needs grading or it doesn't need grade? Who makes those calls, and how do you know when to make those calls of whether the track needs work or not?
Well, in the early days, when I was going back now, Christ, Shaun will remember, it was MX1 and MX2. Maybe one support class occasionally.
Yeah.
So really, we just used to look after the jumps, like especially somewhere like Vulcan Squad, for example. It was like clean up the 4 or 5 takeoffs, just so we know that they're safe. As the more and more classes got introduced, it was like, well, one, we don't have time to get out on the track. And that's why a Saturday night was almost like a full grade, because the track was so rough, you couldn't leave it again because physically it would be so dangerous. So a little bit of a combination of Ustream, the FIM, and then ourselves working on the track and the event organizer as well. Of course, you have to include, their track, what they achieve. My theory was always like, first off, make it safe. Let's clean up the jumps. Let's make that safe. That's the bit the crowd of, and then the guys need to play on. Going back to the track thing of, you've got to have fun on it to be able to race on it, and at least be safe, feel safe. They go, oh, why have they not done that? There's nothing worse than that. So if I was riding, I would like the jumps all nice and clean and safe. That's number one. And then the other one was like Shaun said, if we could have bailed every track and had lines around every corner, ideal. But some places didn't. So if it on it, Shaun will probably remember in Latvia, I used to go and make bumps before that one bit, and then they would ride into those. Something Ricky Carmichael said. He said, "Why are we not swapping the corners? And if it looks flat, build braking bumps. Just physically build braking bumps."
My man stayed and builds braking bumps when I like practicing.
That's mad.
In that, we try and do the best we could with what we had in a lot of places. Some places, the place did it for you. Lummel did it for you. Vulcan Squad pretty much did it for you. But so the harder you had to work on a bit more.
Okay, there's been a lot made, let's say, possibly last year, maybe a bit longer than that, maybe 18 months, maybe even longer than that. Getting a few debates, the keyboard warriors on, like, we're all keyboard warriors to a degree, but we've all got an opinion, and that's where a lot of it gets shared on the internet about rider safety of late, or certainly the last year. There seems, certainly at GP level, a lot more riders getting injured, some coming towards the end of their career, bailing out, and maybe because the contract is not, that they literally are not getting paid enough for what they see the risk. Where are both of your take on tracks these days? Is it the tracks that are changed, or is it simply because the level's gone up, or is it just simply because the bikes are getting so bloody quick? Because when you guys crash now, Shaun, we all crash, but let's be honest, you guys are hauling. I mean, proper hauling. When it goes wrong spectacularly. So where are we at? Do you think it's the bikes? Do you think it's the track? Where are we at with it all?
I honestly don't know, because I've seen a few seasons of motocross. I've been riding at GPs for 15 years, and I've been riding since I was 13. So little under 20 years since I started riding, and I just ride to my own capabilities, and especially now being in my 30s and having a family, if I'm not just feeling it, I'll just say that's not for me today. If there's a big jump out there, like Justin, I remember the jump in Thailand where everyone was doing, only a couple of people were doing the first year we were there, and the next year he come back and everyone had just said, well, I know it's doable, and everyone started doing it. it's just kind of like a feeling thing. And I just go to when I'm feeling it. And if I'm not feeling it, I need to put my safety first and think about the long term of the stuff. But I don't agree that the bikes are too quick. I don't agree that the tracks are more dangerous. Yeah, the jumps are bigger than they used to be. I'm going to say when I started, but they're not, because some of the jumps in Isle of Wight were massive in 04. Probably if you strided them out, they were probably exactly the same as they are these days. So, I don't agree there's an argument for, there's way more injuries now than there used to be. There's way more guys riding at a pace to try and win a race. In MXGP now, we literally have 20 guys that can finish in the top 5. And 15 of those could probably get a top 3, and 10 of those could probably win a race. So when you've got those guys battling and pushing them, and arguably, yes, sometimes I do go over my comfort zone a little bit, because you're just pushing a little bit more than that guy that you're trying to chase down or whatever. And that's when little things happen. And that can happen at club level or British Championship level. And it's just, I feel, you just get seasons where injuries are bad. And I remember, I think it was 2011, Steve Ramon got injured, broke his neck. And I remember that season was just a bad year. It was just lots of injuries.
Profside as well got hurt as well that year.
Yeah, and there was seasons that followed that you were like, God, there was like no one got injured this year. But this year, for example, there was, a lot of guys got injured and were out by the end of the season. And I don't know where I'm definitely on the fence with that one. I don't think there is a reason for it.
You say that, Shaun, comes back to because we used to get a medical report after every Grand Prix. And they'd sort of say to you, like, a couple of guys got hurt, a couple of injuries, nothing. And I remember we went out to this remote place, and Shaun will remember it. We went out to the middle of nowhere. I mean, in the middle of nowhere. And I do remember it was.
You know what? I drove to that one. It was north of Moscow, and me and my dad drove there in my camper, and we were driving all the way. And do you know what? We were like, never been to Russia before. It's going to be awesome. And we literally arrived after a freaking 4,000-kilometer trip. We were like, oh, this will be it then. Flat field. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the track. It was pretty cool, and you made what you could of it, and the dirt was reasonable. Yeah, it was just like, really?
Yeah.
For just a bit of flat ground.
We drove. I remember driving there, and I think I counted 4 hours. I think I saw one telegraph post.
Right.
We were driving out. That's how bad it was. Literally in the middle of nowhere. But they had MX1, MX2, European 250, European 125. They had loads of classes there, and they came at the end of the day and they went, "We've got no injuries to report whatsoever." But then you go to I don't want to say Matley because it's like the home track and where I started working with Johnny and Steve and everything. There, every year they change the finish line jump. Everyone crashes there. But it's been the same since 2006. It hasn't got bigger. It hasn't got smaller. It hasn't changed. But they said, you've got to change that. It's like, they say every year, change. Well, it's been the same. How can you have the data say that it's just dangerous? It's just that it's right in front of you that you see people crash there. People crash around every day,
It's to be fair, though, it is pretty dangerous when they have the vets class.
Yeah, well,
that's pretty terrifying, as Merv will testify to that one.
But, you can have an injury report, Justin, but that doesn't actually reflect how dangerous your track is, because you could have one guy that bloody crashes in a corner and breaks his tibia because he's, it's twisted it in a rut and his bike's fell on it or whatever. Or, 3 broken collarbones because, guys slid off in the first corner and went down on their elbow. So an injury report doesn't properly reflect how dangerous a track is. And one of my pet hates, and I totally agree with you, Justin, about grooming the faces of takeoffs of jumps, because no one wants to go out after a sight and lap and not just hit the exact rut that they wanted to on a takeoff, like in Lommel or Valkenswaard, where there might be a kicker, and just get caught out and just be very unlucky. But I also don't like guys that just complain about, oh, track is so sketchy, it's why it's so dangerous. Like, I just hate words like that in motocross, because it's motocross. You have to use your brain. And I remember, probably sorry, I was playing with my little boy.
Well, Dick Law did actually ask, why is Shaun waving a hammer about?
I thought we were having We're having an auction in a minute.
He's actually, because it's lockdown and he basically, his family's grown so much, he's pitched up a tent in the garden and he's been.
Yeah, I'm actually building a kitchen at home.
That's what it is.
But what I was going to say was, like being sketchy, it's motocross. You have to be able to read a track, and it's part of the game. It's part of choosing lines and using your brain. And I remember probably 5 years ago, so 10 years into my motocross GP career, I was like, I turned up at a track and I was like, I'm not really enjoying it today. There was like 1 second between the top 8, and I just wasn't really feeling it because I knew it was going to be a hard slog of a day, eating a load of roost, a bit like MotoGP. And like, there was this young kid, maybe like 20 years old, in MX2 or MXGP. I can't even remember who it was. And he's like, track is so awesome today, man. So awesome. And it just made me think, like, the reason that he said it was awesome was because he just didn't actually have to engage his brain. He was just like drifting around corners and doing massive whips. And he just thought, track is so much fun today. But I was actually thinking about the racing and thinking, like, where am I going to pass people? How am I going to make up time if I get a bad start? All of these things. And I'm probably an overthinker when it comes to it. I should probably just get a hold of it.
Okay. So do you think that riders expect too much in track prep these days? Going on what you said, Shaun, like when you turn up, like how would your reaction if you turn up at, okay, let's say, a relatively high standard club event or a sort of, a national, let's say a national, and it was already quite choppy. Would you have reservations about it? Would you expect it as a pro rider to be completely flat?
No, I honestly wouldn't. I definitely, the old school Shaun and me would just be like, I don't care what's out on the track. I'm going to go and ride it. But I do like effort. Yeah, I like to see, going back to what I previously said, changes to the track, a little bit of a different layout, a new jump, a new section, something that's going to just change it from the previous year.
Yeah.
Arguably something like Hoxton Park, which everyone knows I love Hoxton Park. It's pretty much the same every year. Okay, there's maybe been a few changes over the years, but the jumps are a bit sort of like needing a little bit of sort of love. There was like 1 year where they actually done a new loop up into the trees somewhere, and it's like the sandiest part of a track I've ever rode in my life. It's just never been touched by a motocross wheel, and it was like we were just loving it. It's like so deep. And the bits that sort of get packed over years and years and years just become quite sort of hard to like maybe a Valkenswaard style sand.
Yeah. It's the sand dies. Like, we know, I'm sure Jeff was about to say, like with a hard pack track, and it's the same with the sand and everything. Moose, the suspension guy, and everyone remembers him from the GP paddock. He used to say, look, a track's a living, breathing thing. How much, like, your tires wear down, all that rubber's gone into the track, all the oil's gone into the track, and it's like, you think of all these little things, you're like, really, it's dead. It is. The soil becomes dead. Like, grass won't even grow on it. So that means it's dead, So that's why we put loads of sawdust in, loads of wood chip in. We try and put new soil on all the time. Like Shaun said, it's making an effort. And some places do make an effort, some places don't. But when you got to somewhere, that it hasn't been graded and stuff, so I think a section's quite cool like that. It's got old bumps in it. But there's got to be, an effort. But as we know, Shaun members go into a lot of the places I do, it's all down to budget.
I think we touched on it earlier. I think, Shaun, you might have said it, so you're never going to build a track that is going to please everybody, Obviously, Justin, you run a practice track. Shaun, you race loads. I'm now in the business of running events as well, and you're going to get some people that will think it was awesome, depending on what suits them and what doesn't. Justin, how do you cope with that, running a practice track? Because clearly you must get this spectrum, like on any given weekend or whatever throughout the year, going, Cuss's course, amazing, best track. Never going there again, hellhole, rubbish. How do you take it on board? You've got to have, it's constructive criticism, right? You've got to be able to take it all on board. Surely you can't be taking it personally. Can you?
No, I used to when I was younger. I used to. My dad was, God bless his soul, he was very wise in all those kind of things. In the end, he just used to tell people what he thought of them if they gave him a comment.
Well, don't bother coming.
I've been there. I've been there when Ian done that. I've been there a few times when Ian's done that. Yeah.
Yeah, but he wore his, his heart on his sleeve and sort of said it as it was, sort of thing. But and he did used to teach me. He said, "You'll never please everyone all of the time, but if you can please a majority most of the time, then you've done, a lot of the job." And I used to talk to Shaun. At Grand Prix, I had about 5 riders that would either come and find me and talk to me, or I'd go and ask them and go, because they'd be walking the track. Now, Shaun was one that would always be out walking the track. And Willie would be like, you want to get here? And then you get Max Anstey would always be walking the track. Philip Hartz would always be walking the track.
He's there listening in.
He's there, yeah. But they'd all give constructive, they go, like we talked earlier, like Shaun would say, like, that all works, that's fun, that's great, there's a good bit of the track, but I don't like that bit, or that bit doesn't work. And if I had about 5 or 6 people, or if all those 5 riders said the same thing, then you do something about it. But if it was one said something, or another one said something different, or they all pointed to different bits of the track, and you're just like, well, hang on a minute, guys, you're like, it's all a bit...
No content, yeah.
But if they all sort of said the same thing, then you do it. And hence why I changed our track this year, because a lot of people said, come on, you need some changes here. So, like, and you made the effort. Yeah, it was a week of work, and I've changed it, and it's a lot different. And now I've gone, like, cool, I can change it again and change it again. And, like, Valkenswaard was one of the places I used to love going and work, because it was the same old track all year. I'm sure, Shaun, on a Thursday afternoon, it was the same old guy in a little old tractor going around. And we used to make the track go backwards, I think, back then.
Yeah.
So the other way, so all the spectators would sit, and it was cool because you used to turn the dirt over, and at least it would try and get a bit bumpy. But I worked out there, the more you water it, the bumpier it got, so the wetter it was.
I think it is tricky to please everyone, and I think it's also, riders these days can be a bit sort of prima donna-ish. It's the done thing these days to walk a track and give your opinion. I think back in the day it was you walked the track and you went, right, let's get ready to scrambling.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, have you walked the track? What do you think? And you're almost kind of waiting for a reaction or to see how it is. And I've walked new tracks on the GP calendar where everyone that you speak to goes, oh, awesome, this track looks unreal, it's going to just be amazing. And after first practice, everyone started going around going like, oh, not really what I thought it was going to be. So that tells you straight away that what, an experienced motocross rider sees in his head of a track and jumps and dirt doesn't just work sometimes.
But that's what I mean. Do you think it's a generational thing? Because, I'm exactly like you said, that for me, that was it. I worked my way up, got to do GPs for 5 years. I never sort of even remotely thought, oh, I'm going to moan or compare. That's what's in front of you. And the art of motocross is to deal what's in front of you. You touched on it earlier. Do you think like a younger generation, and certainly parents, particularly, I suppose, they're worried about safety for their kids, or whatever, they're turning up, you're doing a date, and they just want this like absolute perfection every time. And it's just not how our sport is it? Like you got to, like with the kids, we've seen it before. They say it gets too rough, but it gets to a point where the track gets rough enough where it actually makes it safer, because it slows the kids down and they've got to use their head, right?
Yeah. When or that's when you find out that the kid's he's just not got the brains to be able to say like, "Whoa, this is going to go wrong here," and that's all about finding your limit. But you're dead right. Arguably, Lommel, for example, it's like 15 seconds slower in the second race as it is in practice in the morning, because it's bumpier, it's rougher. You're taking smoother lines, but you're actually probably doing 50 to 100 yards extra per lap because you're going a long way around the corners and all the rest of it. And I remember Stefan Everett's telling me, he's like, the fastest way around a sand track is the shortest way. But, how many laps can you do that for? That's when you have to decide in your head, I'm going to do that for, 3 laps or 5 laps or 6 laps. And then you need to start looking for better lines. And it's just using your brains. I love it. There was a comment popped up there about inside humps. We should probably
let's get that. Let's do, because we'll wrap this up soon. We go for an hour. Got 5 more minutes out of us lot. Not only that, because I'm busting for a piss because I've got a bladder like the size of an ant, and I'm 3 beers in and I'm useless. Right.
The
So
inside corner humps is there. See, if you build a new track and you go for an inside corner hump, I wouldn't like to guess how high you need to make it, because if you make it 6 inches too low, it's faster than the outside. You make it 6 inches too high, the outside's quicker. Sometimes you almost need to adjust it as the weekend's going on and get it absolutely spot on, because if you go to a track that's maybe had an inside hump for 10 years, like there's a few at Valkenswaard that actually work so good, and even to the point where you're coming up to it and you're behind the guy and you go, inside or outside, you're just not sure because they're both identical nearly. It's just maybe how you're feeling that time you come up to it. But other times you come to an inside hump and you go, well, that's a waste of time. I'm never going to go out there because the inside hump's too wide or it's too high, or you know what I mean? So they can work, but they don't always.
I'm sure probably remembers in my early days, I probably used to, I didn't use them all the time, but I used to put a couple on places. If I saw one line things, I was like, we'll do something here.
Did you get a bit carried away, Justin? Did you get a bit inside hump happy?
But no, I was like, well, it's the closest to building works on track. No, it was, and you used to put them, and then I thought, hang on a minute, we need to change what's before it or what's after it, rather than have that bump, because you're creating then a 1 meter, like Shaun said, that bump is the quickest line. You're creating a 1 meter track when you've got 8 meters outside of it. So let's just change what's before it and after it. And then if there's something after it where you need more momentum and more speed, it will force people to go outside. And then if you can dive up the inside, you can. I remember, Shaun remember it, Glen Helen one year, and he was sat talking about the split lanes before the finish line.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, everyone's going on the right-hand one. And we're like, yeah, but, and Jody Weisel even said to you, he goes, but the left-hand one is the shorter distance.
Yeah.
And then we watched you go out in your free practice, and you were probably one of the only ones going in the left-hand one, but you were gaining about a second because it was short. But everyone went for the inside one because they were, well, it's inside, it's got to be quicker, isn't it? But you were going outside to outside, and it was quick. It was actually shorter distance.
Yeah.
Because but until you walked the track and looked at it and watched what other people were doing, But going back to that, I don't like inside bumps. I haven't got any at my track, and I don't think they should be. If anything, they should be an off-cambered one, so it's higher on the inside, lower on the outside, and then you get to, like Shaun, do you go on the outside, do you go in the middle, or do you go on the inside? You've got three options rather than just one or the other.
Absolutely agree with what you said. You don't always need an inside hump. If you make two big like rolling kickers or braking bumps coming into the inside of a track, that's enough to slow you down before you get into the rut, that the guy on the outside carries the same momentum, gets alongside you, and then carries the speed around the corner. So ultimately you're coming out of the corner together. Or like you said, do something different on the exit of the corner where the inside rut comes into like a bit of a rollery section and the outside's got nothing. So there's a few ways to skin a cat, but it's...
I knew it was worth getting you two on. You two actually start to sound like you know what you're talking about. I mean, this is good stuff.
But we're both with families.
Yeah. Look, we said we wouldn't be a long one tonight, so we're not going to. But look, let's finish off with a couple more questions. This one's for you, Justin, but also you can answer this, Shaun, as in just picking your all-time favourite track. So, Justin, as a track builder, if you could cut out planet Earth, a chunk of it, and deposit it at Cusses, what would you put in there? A good question, that, Carl.
I'll just answer it for him. He probably just wants a bit of sand to play with, so he could just have a track all year long. I do not.
Oh, we're crying out for one of them down south.
Having a hard packed track where it's hard as nails in summer, and then you just can't get riding in the winter.
Yeah.
I would have said, do you know what? And Huck used to say this, God bless his soul as well. You can travel anywhere in the world, but there's nothing better than driving home and seeing the rolling hills of Wiltshire or around that way, and you're home. And I would love just probably a little bit sandier dirt at my track. That would be probably about it. Just something Tim and I don't have to get up at like 5 a.m.
All right, so you don't have to work a track, but what other than your track, what do you think is, if you could ride one more track, you're not allowed to ride a bike again. You got one shot at riding a motocross bike before you're not allowed to ride a motocross bike ever again, and you've got to ride a motocross track. What would it be?
Majora, and then a dip in the pool at the top of the hill, and then
Nice.
With a beer.
I'd try it the other way around. Dip in the pool, beer, more beer, then try the track. It'd be awesome.
I think there, I loved it there. You know, it was like a little home when I was there for a while, and the guys were mega there. Yeah, I really love it there. That's probably where. There's a lot of history.
I think probably the Isle of Wight. It was my first Grand Prix. It was my first British Championship track as well. So
I just say that because part of it. So get in. It was amazing dirt though, wasn't it? I mean, both of you will agree that the lie of the land obviously was amazing because you had the elevation and everybody could see it. But it was the dirt. As we touched,
that's
the dirt is what made it.
Talked about a track,
yeah.
But for me, the track length is important. I like a 1:55 to 2 minute plus. I don't like a 2:30 track, but in and around that 2 minutes is great because otherwise qualifying you're just like, oh, is that it? Is that all I've got to play with? Because the longer track, the more time you have to make up time on your competitors. And I just hate when we go to a track and it's like a 1:35 lap time, and you think,
No, I didn't like those days. Those came into the end of the Grand Prix days where they were like, we need to bring the track length to 1,500 meters.
Yeah.
1:45 lap time was their goal, and I was like, well, you're going to end up with these bumps and just like that the whole straight in time. A 2 minute lap time with a bit of everything sort of thrown in, like Shaun says, is the ideal track. That's about all you can.
And you get complaints about tracks like Faenza and things like that this year. They were like, wow, the average speed was way too high. But, if you've got a track where they've got a goal for a lap time, you can't put any technical stuff in there or to try and slow it down because it doesn't meet the criteria of what they want for the TV cameras and so forth.
I would say, I've got to choose one. God, there's a lot in there.
Mountain, aren't you?
No, do you know what? This might surprise you. I'm going to go with, obviously, Isle of Wight has a special place in my heart because, just because integral part of actually making that happen. But I would go with Kester in Belgium as my track because it was kind of like it's like same kind of dirt as Farley, but like all up through the trees and a few God, they're starting to work, aren't they?
That's a really good shout, actually.
Elevation. That's what I'm trying to say. Kester.
Nothing on it all year, load of grass.
Yeah, brilliant.
Load of grass, and you think, what? And then after practice, you're like, whoa! You can turn anywhere. Bombs, amazing. Technical, unreal.
That's it. That's what we're ending on. Steve Elford, look, this is Justin's going to like this. Steve's been throwing a few comments tonight. He says Glen Helen. Steve, I'm glad you've been tuning in. Just to bring you up to speed here, Shaun, at our Rocket Till Sundown event, Steve didn't particularly get on or enjoy the track, and yet he came 2 weeks before and he said it was great. But then our event, it had been baked all day. Then we had to water it heavily. The adults ride in the evening, so it turned up as a bit choppy. Steve is a forthright in coming forward. I'll give him that. So he's saying basically what you got to do there, Justin, is just bin your place off and bring Glen Helen in for next year's Rocket Till Sundown event. We will try to make that happen, Steve. Is that right, Justin?
Yeah,
everyone that actually knows Glen Helen knows that the dirt there isn't that great.
No, it's not. It sucks. When it's dry.
I remember going there, I was like 20-something when we went there for a Grand Prix. I remember Shaun, I was like, I put an American house, like, yeah, great to be an American and everything. And I was like, is this it?
Yeah.
The people that run it were lovely and stuff like that. But yeah, again, that's a place where I think every bit of dirt has been used every Thursday, Saturday, Sunday since the year dot.
Yeah.
And, that's where the track is like 10 foot in the ground up the hills because every bit of dirt.
They always try and do something a bit different. And that's what makes it cool because you go knowing it's going to be different to the last time you rode it.
Yeah. We can all but try, can't we? So, Steve, I'm going to say it. We will try harder for next year's event. Hopefully, it won't be so sunny and hot all day, and the track.
Hopefully, we can get Shaun to come in and do it because it would be,
Well, I'm going with the.
It looks awesome. It really does.
I'm going with the.
You always clash. It's so tricky and busy.
No, mate, you're busy. You're busy.
I'd love to come.
bigger fish to fry. We'll try and make that happen. But, let's be honest, it was the weather. It was so hot that day, wasn't it, Justin? I mean, the track was, you used more water at our event than 2 days than the MX Nationals.
Yeah.
So no wonder the track was a bit baked. Then it decided to piss down in the evening, which didn't make the track that great. But there you go, Steve. We'll do our best. He said, thank you. You're welcome, Steve. We'll have you back. We're always open to a bit of open criticism. Right, fellas, I've taken too much of your time. That was brilliant. I could talk for another half hour on tracks or more because there's so much to talk about. Maybe we will come back and revisit it one day. Just another shout out. Are you sure you want to mention Mach 3 again? Just to try and get a...
Yeah, can I have one as well? I need one as well. But...
Gillette, you need to get involved, sponsor this show so we can all be clean shaven. Right, fellas, I'll leave you to it. Thanks for your time on a Monday. We will sort it. Gareth, I'm not just singling Gareth out. British organisers, hay bale idea might just be worth looking at. And there we go. Yeah. So take care, guys. Listen, have a great Christmas. Justin, I'll see you before then anyway because we got plans. That sounded weird.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going out. I mean, we got plans. Event plans. Whatever. Right, guys. Shaun, all the best. Take care. Good luck. You've got another child on the way? Yes?
Yeah, January. Sometime mid-January we'll be upgrading our family to 4. So, yeah, it's going to be nice. Just said to Rachel the other day, we're having a baby next month. She was like, yeah, so we are. We're that busy with Angus at the moment.
Just forgot about that.
Yeah.
Shaun forgot about it so much. He goes, wait, I tell you, you're piling it on, aren't you? And we're not even at Christmas yet. Oh, yeah, you're having a baby. I remember. Yeah. Okay. Well, good. All the best with that. Yeah. Have a good Christmas. And listen, we're going to see you racing British Championship. And good luck for next year, Shaun, if I don't catch up with you before the season starts. Justin, we've had a lot of comments about your hair this evening. I will let you answer them and go back to the people that have been trying to slate you. I've been good and not pulled the comments up. All right, so I'll let you deal with that.
When you're on the track,
it's okay. I look like a little red gnome because again, I've put the heating on too bloody hot in here. I've been burning up throughout the interview. Got to get that right. Right, we're out of here, guys. I'll let you go, and I'll see you. I don't know when. So, tally ho, off they go. Yeah. That's Shaun Simpson gone. Justin, see you later. Thanks for your time, mate. Nice. Look good. And there you go. That is another Dirty Talk live show. Richard Burridge. I just missed that comment. Prefer Tinkleton. Yes. Rich, Tinkleton, lovely dirt. I wish we could have stayed there. But just the number of competitors, we almost outgrew the pits. Get a big pits. That's what we need to do. We might look at coming back for Rocket till Sunday. So thanks for everybody tuning in. Thanks to Shaun and Justin. A real insight there about what it takes to build a modern track, and that age-old story, how do they compare with tracks of yesteryear? But I think we can say the track conditions have changed, the sport's changed. It's a debate that will go on forever, rose-tinted glasses, whatever you want to think of it. We'll always have debates about tracks, but that's what makes it so good. Kind of like football, really. They brought VAR in and it's taken all the fun out of it. So we'll always argue about tracks, I'm sure. And people like Justin, Johnny, Elfie will continue to do their best to keep them awesome. Right. Stay safe, everybody. I'm out of here. I'm going to be back with one more show before Christmas. No idea what it's going to be about or who guests coming on. We'll let you know nearer the time. I bought a 4-pack of Estrella. I've got one left. I might as well cane it and start the week off proper. And we'll see you soon. I'm out of it. Later, folks.